Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Jai. So it's the discipline day today of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Yes. Yeah. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was the son of Venkata Bhatta, a resident of Sri Rangam. In the year 1433 Shikabda, when Lord Chaitanya was touring South India, he stayed for 4 months during the period of Chaturmasya at the house of Venkata Bhatta, who then got the opportunity to serve the Lord to his heart's content. Gopal Bhatta also got the opportunity to serve the Lord at this time. He was later initiated by his uncle, the great sannyasi, Bhavananda Saraswati. When Lord Chaitanya was informed that Gopal Bhatta went to Vrindavan, he was very pleased and advised Sri Rupa and Sanatan to accept Gopal as their younger brother and take care of him. Under the instruction of Srila Rupa and Sanatan, he installed one of the 7 principal deities of Vrindavan, the Radharaman deity. Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami compiled a book called Sat Kriya Sara Dipik, edited the Hari Bhakti Vilas, wrote a foreword to the Satsandava and a commentary on the Krishna Kanamrita. Formerly, he was an Anga Manjari. Sometimes it is said that he was an incarnation of Guna Manjari. Srinivasacharya and Gopinath Pujari were his 2 disciples. Jai Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami Ki Jai. So reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, this is volume 6, Uniting 2 Worlds. Chant Hare Krishna and fight. The days went peacefully with mild, pleasant breezes, always passing through Srila Prabhupada's room. His intelligence was ever sharp and alert, and yet his health did not improve. Bhavananda Goswami had come from Mayapur and had been intimately serving Srila Prabhupada, but he had to return to Bengal for important preaching duties. Srila Prabhupada said there was no doubt that Bhavananda was the best at giving massage and taking personal care of his spiritual master. But the personal servant's duties were not as important as preaching. Upendra had come to be Srila Prabhupada's personal servant, and he was surprised to see how Prabhupada's diet had changed. He could no longer cook the khichdi, which Prabhupada had previously liked. Often Prabhupada would not even speak when he wanted something, but he would indicate an idea or a desire with a nod of the head, a glance, a flick of the finger, or a sound like From his room, Prabhupada had the routine sounds of the day, the call of the cuckoos and the crows, the hammering of the marble workers, and the more distant car engines, horns, bicycle bells. He could also hear the Pujari's bell and the conch shell at each arti, as well as the kirtans and bhajans in the temple room. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Canto 5, Chapter 14, The Forest of Enjoyment. And it's one translation without purport, right? And then one with a purport. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just run through the Sanskrit. Kadachin Bhagna Magna Damastro Durjana Danda Shukya Alabda Nidra Kshano Vyatita Hridaya Nukushimana Vigyano and the Kupe Nandavat Patati. Translation. In the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul is sometimes bitten by envious enemies, which are compared to serpents and other creatures. Through the tricks of the enemy, the conditioned soul falls from his prestigious position. Being anxious, he cannot even sleep properly. He thus becomes more and more unhappy, and he gradually loses his intelligence and consciousness. In that state, he becomes almost perpetually like a blind man who has fallen into a dark well of ignorance. So Prabhupada Prana was saying this the other day, wasn't he? The Andikupe, a blind well. So text 22. So we're going to go through, I'll just run through the Sanskrit again. Kahi sma chitakama madhu lavan vichinvan yadapara darapara dravyanya arundano rajnas swami vir van nihata pati yapare nire. So responsibly, please. Kahi sma chit, sometimes. Kama madhu lavan, little drops of honey-like sense gratification. Vichinvan, searching after. Yada, when. Paradara, another's wife or a woman other than his own wife. Paradravyani, another's money and possessions. Avarandanaha, taking as his own property. Rajna, by the government. Swami Viva, or by the husband or relatives of the woman. Nihata, severely bitten. Oh, sorry, severely beaten, sorry. Patiti, he falls down. Apare, into unlimitedly. Niraye, hellish conditions of life. The government's prison for criminal activities like rape, kidnapping, or theft of others' property. Translation. The conditioned soul is sometimes attracted to the little happiness derived from sense gratification. Thus he has illicit sex or steals another's property. At such a time, he may be arrested by the government or chastised by the woman's husband or protector. Thus simply for a little material satisfaction, he falls into a hellish condition and is put into jail for rape, kidnapping, theft, and so forth. Prabhupada ki jai. Material life is such that due to indulgence in illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating, the conditioned soul is always in a dangerous condition. Meat eating and intoxication excite the senses more and more, and the conditioned soul falls victim to women. In order to keep women, money is required, and to acquire money one begs, borrows, or steals. Indeed, he commits abominable acts that cause him to suffer both in this life and the next. Consequently, illicit sex must be stopped by those who are spiritually inclined or who are on the path of spiritual realization. Many devotees fall down due to illicit sex. They may steal money and even fall down from the highly honored, renounced order. Then for a livelihood, they accept menial services and become beggars. It is therefore said in the Shastras, Yan maitunadi griha medi shukam hitucham. Materialism is based on sex, whether licit or illicit. Sex is full of dangers, even for those who are addicted to household life. Whether one has a license for sex or not, there is great trouble. Bahu dukkha bhak. After one indulges in sex, many volumes of miseries ensue. One suffers more and more in material life. A miserly person cannot properly utilize the wealth he has, and similarly a materialistic person misuses the human form. Instead of using it for spiritual emancipation, he uses the body for sense gratification. Therefore, he is called a miser. Om Agana Timaranda Shaganandjana Shalakaya Chakshun Maritanjana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swavadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha padidinam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. The conditioned soul is sometimes attracted to the little happiness derived from sense gratification. Thus he has illicit sex or steals another's property. At such a time, he may be arrested by the government or chastised by the woman's husband or protector. Thus, simply for a little material satisfaction, he falls into a hellish condition, and he's put into jail for rape, kidnapping, theft, and so forth. So we're in the forest of enjoyment, and so it's quite a bleak picture. People go into a forest sometimes to enjoy themselves, and then they can get lost in the forest and they can't find the way out, and then it's not so much fun anymore. So it's kind of called the forest of enjoyment because it's enticing, but then it turns out it's not actually the forest of enjoyment at all. It's the forest of becoming more and more implicated and entangled in all kinds of, well, Prabhupada says there are volumes and volumes just for a little bit of sense gratification. Bahu dukkha bhak. After one indulges in sex, many volumes of miseries ensue. So some enjoyment is there, but a lot more. If you balance it, there's a lot more. You pay a lot more for every ounce of pleasure. There's 3 tons of displeasure and misery. So the picture is bleak. If we want to make the forest of enjoyment a place where we want to reside, then this is to wake us up and help us to see, well, this is not the place to stay permanently. Maybe you want to go through the forest, but you have to know how to get into the forest and then how to get out the forest. And if you just decide you're going to wander into the forest and just take it as it comes, then you'll get lost. You'll get caught up in all kinds of difficulties. So it's little happiness, and the happiness is the happiness of someone who's feeling the relief. So Jayadvaita Swami was saying once that the relief of sense gratification is because of the agitation of meditating on it in the first place. So by the agitation, then the happiness is really just the relief from the agitation. So the wise man will think, well, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. Why should I try and find happiness in them? Because the happiness won't remain. All I will have eventually is some memory of wherever the sense gratification was. That's all I'll be left with. And they say that when you're old, the only thing you have left are memories, and most of them you can't remember. So you end up with very little to retain as a lasting impression. Whereas with devotional service, with spiritual life, wherever satisfaction and fulfillment you experience, that continually increases more and more, and one becomes situated in boundless joy. And once achieving that, he feels there is no greater gain. So this is the real happiness. And that's why the association of devotees is very important, because the association of advanced devotees helps us to see that this is the satisfaction and the fulfillment that I'm really looking for. And so we become inspired to push through the intermediary. There's an intermediary transition where we go from the relief of the agitation that sense gratification calls to the direct experience of the pleasure that spiritual life creates. And there's an interim stage, an intermediate stage, where in between renouncing the pleasure of material happiness and experiencing the pleasure of spiritual life, where one is transitioning, and it's called the clearing stage. We get clear of the unwanted things, the anarthas, and then we can start to get some real pleasure, some what's called ruchi in Sanskrit. And ruchi is where you're experiencing a pleasurable taste, practicing spiritual life. So it's good, it's very important to get the association of advanced devotees that are already experiencing that ruchi, and then it can embody your convictions to push on, because not much longer to go now. It's just up ahead. I just need to keep pushing on, and eventually I'll be experiencing it myself. So the body should be used for spiritual emancipation, Srila Prabhupada saying. And if you use the body for sense gratification, then you're considered a miser. So see with the 6 Goswamis, they came from a very affluent background. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami were ministers. They were practically like prime ministers. They had so much opulence at their disposal. And Raghunath Das came from a very wealthy family. His father had so much. And they went from what would seem a very opulent and good situation to a situation which would seem a very bad one, where they had practically nothing, just a loincloth, nowhere to reside really, just under a different tree every night, and eating practically hardly anything and sleeping hardly at all. And so materially that would seem like a real step backward. But spiritually it's the opposite. So we have to recalibrate what success is and what real progress is and what real advancement is, because as we start to lose material facilities and sense gratification, then we should see that that's a good sign, actually. So Srila Prabhupada is saying all illicit sex. So sex life is just a very difficult situation to get involved in, because it increases the bodily conception. And illicit is even worse, of course, but even illicit sex life, it's full of dangers. And the problem is being addicted. It's referred to as atyahara. Atyahara is one who accumulates and over-endeavors for sense gratification. So the nature of gratifying the senses is because the senses are greedy, that they want more and more. So it's not that I'll just engage in this activity, I'll gratify my senses, and then everything can be fine, and I can just move on, and things will be okay. Then it just gets worse. It's like eating, and as you're eating, you start getting more hungry. So then you eat more, and then you get even more hungry, and then you eat more. And then the whole object of eating was to satisfy the hunger. And it's very, very much the opposite of what happens. It becomes counterproductive. So the idea of regulation is we regulate so that we have a certain amount, and then we stop. And that's how we eventually become free from the addiction of material life, sense gratification. So sometimes we see there's an illustration in Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita of a man being carried along by horses, and the horses are being held by reins. The horses are the senses, and the rein is the mind. So the senses are saying, look at this, and the mind is being tugged. Oh, look at what? And then the intelligence is saying, no, don't look at that. Just, you're chanting Hare Krishna right now. Don't become distracted by anything else. So the intelligence is trying to direct the mind to pull the reins in. And then the soul is watching, and in the picture, he looks really horrified. He's kind of holding the chariot, and he's kind of like, where are we going? Where's this going to take me? So actually the soul is higher than the intelligence, and the intelligence is higher than the mind. So we have to understand this hierarchy and start to implement it. Start to understand that I can override what my senses are telling me, what my mind is pulling me to do, and I can strengthen my intelligence, and I can become very determined. And that's why there's such a strong emphasis on hearing. Hearing doesn't just mean when we're chanting Hare Krishna. Hearing also means when we're reading. Hearing is such an important part, because the hearing helps to nourish the intelligence so it can become very strong. And then it can direct the mind, and then the senses can get pulled in. So everything really begins with the hearing process. And by hearing, then we become inspired to do so many other things. We become inspired to hear the holy name. By hearing about the holy name, then we want to hear the holy name. And by hearing about what material life is really like, then we decide, okay, I want to get free from this. I don't want to stay in this forest of enjoyment for ever and ever, lifetime after lifetime. I want to get out the forest of enjoyment. Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I've heard that didn't quite sit right with me. So some devotees say that, so I'm basically just asking if you can elaborate or shed some light on it. Some devotees say that through Prabhupada, that as long as it's within marriage, it's okay. Yeah, so that to me felt like there doesn't need to be a regulation, and that just felt like, I don't know.
Oh, right, yeah, okay. So that was one. And what was the question?
Yeah, so to what extent? I mean, basically, you've kind of answered it already, but could you sort of expand on it anymore? Because to me, it just felt like, okay, I can understand that it's better, it's not illicit, but still there's an entrapment there because it's feeling the bodily concept, and without any kind of regulation, it just felt really scary.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of places in Srila Prabhupada's books where he very clearly clarifies what it is. It's for population, procreation. So that's the reason it's there, the facility is there. And it's once a month, after 50 rounds. So that's the standard. And then we may have a whole spectrum of shades of grey. And so not everyone will follow to the same degree as others, and then so we choose our association, we look at devotees and think, I'm inspired by this devotee. It is a general tendency you will find. It's what Gora, who was calling it an unemployed critic. The unemployed critics have the most to say, basically because they have the least to do. So you'll find that if a person isn't practicing Krishna consciousness so strictly, then their presentation of the philosophy can be also to justify that lesser practice. You see. So you can choose. That's why Rupa Goswami is saying, choose the devotee that you open your heart to, choose the devotee that you give your dandavas to, and choose the devotee that you just stay distant and respect in your mind. He's not saying that's offensive to do that. In fact, it's a requirement. It's a lend the art of association. Everyone is respected, but some we are more inclined to take direction from, and others were just respectful. So, you'd like to say?
As you were speaking, I reminded Manju's question, reminded what Krishna says in Bhagavatam Gita, as they surrender, I reward accordingly. So those who actually want to surrender to what the spiritual master wants, then they'll do what he wants. And those who don't want to surrender to him, then he might to say, well, okay, you can do this, do that, but it's not really because that's what he wants. It's because, like even Prabhupada says, when he came to England the last time, even when he was sick, he came from Vrindavan back to England, and he was actually feeling so grateful for the British people for allowing his movement to take a foothold. He said if they could just give up eating meat, or at least give up the cow, at least eat the cow. So it's not that he would condone them eating other animals. He's trying to get them to do something better. So if someone is hell-bent on having sex unrestrictedly, then he may just say, at least with your wife. But that's not what he wants. What he wants is that we follow the vows that we take. If we don't want to make the vows, we don't take them. And it's interesting, I don't know if it's how true it was, but because Prabhupada says once a month with married couple can have sex for the purpose of procreation of children. After chanting 50 rounds, that's 50 rounds each, not 50 rounds. So they used to do this thing, sometimes if the boys had kids which were rascals, other boys may come in, that one wasn't a 50 rounder. So if you want your 50 rounder kids, you want your progeny, and you want to expand, and you want to do responsible things for your husband, then the best thing to do is follow what the Prabhupada wants. If you want to do something less, then it's on the same level as Krishna says, if you can't do this, do that. If you can't do this, you can't do that. But better than this is better than that. And this. So the spiritual master also has to instruct according to the disciples' capability. But if you really want to do what he wants to get the best benefit and to get full benediction and go ahead after the self, etc.
Srila Prabhupada's letters weren't just for those individuals, they weren't to be generally applied, so sometimes that's what happens. Srila Prabhupada will concede, like Prabhupada is saying, to encourage, because Prabhupada would say something is better than nothing. So that's fine, but something is not the standard. It's just better than nothing. And it should. And then another interesting thing is, well, Srila Prabhupada, if somebody had a problem and fell down, some difficulty, Srila Prabhupada would reinstate them immediately, no problem, because he understood that this hermeneutic is difficult. And then unintentionally, sometimes there can be an accident. What Srila Prabhupada didn't like was philosophical fall down. Which was when you suddenly decided, hey, I just realized when they say fall, that actually means 3. It doesn't mean 4 at all. It means 3 plus 1, and the 1's optional. I never realized it before, but I mean, it's not directly there in the Sanskrit, but if you think about it, it makes sense, doesn't it? So then this comes in and says, Shishi Kadnivaya Shishi and 5. So then 4 becomes 3, and then 16 becomes 4. Well, actually, no, because I'm pretty offensive on the chat. So I'm going to reduce my offenses by 75%. I'm just going to change 4 hours. Where does it say that? Sorry, what chapter was that in? Well, it's not there in the, but everyone knows when you're off with the essence. Everyone knows. It says that. We know it's what we do. We've got to be real. We've got to be, we're living in modern times, we have to think of these things. So this is the Srila Prabhupada was very happy about that. That's why the books are the books, they say the same things, although the people may say different things. We can gently ask sometimes, what does it say that? Or we may just respect them from the distance. But it's important for ourselves that we safeguard against, and that's why regular reading is very much emphasized, because you can actually find yourself wandering off the beaten track without even realizing it. And then suddenly you start reading it and you realize, oh my goodness, I've been doing this, and that's actually the standard. And it is just a general tendency that as you go along, you cut corners, and that's why it's good every now and then if an older devotee can come in and just oversee what's happening, how you do the puja, how you do the cooking, is the kitchen clean, is this situation okay, and then you oversee and everything's kept to the standard, and then the whole makes nice.
That kind of links to the other thing I was wondering as well. I've also heard that, I've heard in one of Prabhupada's lectures that he recommends hearing his classes, and but then there's another perspective also that things become more personal, so the books are more general for everybody, and then the classes there's time for this and circumstance, and then there's the letters. And so this kind of caused a bit of like, okay, well, I don't get it then. Prabhupada saying it's best to hear my voice, to hear me speaking, but then that's more personal, and people say we'll start with the books. Yeah.
Well, Srila Prabhupada sacrificed quite a lot of his time and health to write the books for us to read, and it's reciprocal that by reading the Srila Prabhupada becomes very pleased. So sometimes devotees will say on Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, they'll write an offering and lament, oh Prabhupada, I'm so sorry that I never saw you, and I wish I'd been there to be your disciple, and it's such a shame, I'm so weak, I'm so compromised because of that. It's kind of like almost like an indirect excuses, don't expect too much from me, But personally I never experienced that, and I've spoken to other devotees also that never really experienced that they read Srila Prabhupada's book regularly, and the the amazing dynamic of that is then you have a relationship with Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada would be so pleased that you're doing that. He was so pleased when his disciples did read his books. And then if you're hearing from anybody else, you should only be hearing what they've heard from Srila Prabhupada's books anyway, but they've just assimilated it and calibrated it and decided and thought, well, you can, when Prabhupada says that, you can implement it like this, you know. Prabhupada saying we need to be tolerant like a tree and more humble than the blade of grass. So how do we do that? And then someone can say, well, you know, you can do it by being more appreciative of devotees and serving the devotees, and that will help safeguard you against being like that. And so we find practical ways of how they've learned to apply it. You see. That's why it's very important part of the whole relationship that we have with Srila Prabhupada is by taking regular association of his disciples and seeing how they've assimilated the. And it's a beautiful book by Shiva Ramaraj, Srila Bhakti Chintamani. It's a really good one for all devotees actually, but especially for devotees that are just starting, because he clearly outlines the pitfalls on the path of bhakti. The approach Rupa Goswami says the path of bhakti is winding and it's covered in kunkul and sandalwood, so it's very slippery. And like Srila Prabhupada was saying, many devotees fall down due to unsuccess. So it's there, you know, there's the path, and then these are the places that people slipped off, and these are the people in the ditch. And the ones that slip off and fall in the ditch, Shiva Ramaraj refers to as the quagmire, the breeding ground for superfluous desires. So when you slip off the path, if you don't get back on the path, the problem is then you can become full of material desires, and you can become very offensive and very critical as well. Because one of the problems with straying off the path is you can't start thinking, well, if I can't stay on the path, that probably means the others who stayed on the path are probably just pretending. I mean, if I couldn't do it, how could anyone really do it? So that, and then that becomes the criticism that they don't really believe anyone's a pure devotee. Or in fact, everyone that's following what Srila Prabhupada wants is a pure devotee to the extent that they're following. If you're doing that, and Srila Prabhupada would never take any credit. He would say, it's only because I'm following my Guru Maharaj, and he's a pure devotee that I'm having success. So Srila Prabhupada would refer to himself, he was a pure devotee. So we're pure devotees if we're following Srila Prabhupada, trying to apply, trying to implement. And the trying is interesting as well, because in the West we're very result orientated. How many Mangalantis you have this morning? How many books did you distribute? How many potatoes did you peel? And so it's also important how the person is trying. He may be trying, he may not want to read the Bible. Maybe he holds the Bhagavad Gita upside down, and he's trying to read it. He can't actually read, but anyway, that's a matter of detail. The spiritual master taught him to read it, so he's reading the Bhagavad Gita upside down. And then Lord Chaitanya says, well, you understand the Bhagavad Gita, and the internet they go the right way up, and they can quote 55,000 slokas. But you're crying because Krishna's driving a chariot, and they're not crying. So you understand the Bhagavad Gita, and they have to. So you can't just judge by external evidence. The person's trying. Krishna knows who's trying. Anyway, it's amazing how to associate with everyone. We want to love everyone, and some of them we really, and some of them we kind of love them. But there's others that we really, really love because we see how dedicated they are and how much of a sacrifice they've made, you know. I know one, it's really interesting, I know one devotee, he's actually a disciple. He's an initiated disciple of a spiritual master. And there's another devotee, and he's not an initiated, and he's following that devotee's spiritual master better than he is, and he's initiated, and he's not initiated, but he's doing more. The spiritual master said to him, well, just do this. And he's decided, well, I'll do more than that. He's doing more than he's being asked. And the other one is trying to do the least that he's asked. So still we respect everybody, but if we could see the devotees through Krishna's eyes, how Krishna sees them, and appreciate them. That's why Krishna says, Apichat Sudarachiro in the Bhagavad Gita 9:30, he says, don't deride them. If they're trying, then they should still be considered saintly. There may be some mistakes and problems. So yeah, the thing to watch out for is the philosophical twist, the justification. Just being weak, and that's not a problem. We know that. That's what the Bhagavatam is telling us. We know that. We know that it's easy to have problems. We know that. But what's difficult is to keep getting back up and trying. They say actually, a person who's considered a failure is not a person who fails. It's a person who stops trying. If you continue trying, then you're not a failure. No matter how many times you fail, you're only a failure when you stop trying. Then you can say, okay, I want the official failure badge because I've stopped trying now. Okay, so I get the official badge. And someone else is wearing the badge and you say, what are you doing? So I'm chanting, so I have to take the badge off. If you're going to carry on chanting, then we can't consider you a failure just yet. Any other questions or comments? So I have a question which came to mind when I was reading it mentions that he may be put into jail for rape, kidnapping, theft, and so forth. And I just wondered how that was the case, how that was a consequence of being involved. Somebody could say, well, I like material satisfaction, but you won't catch me going around doing these things. I don't see the connection.
Sometimes due to poverty or circumstances, or people are very poor, they're socially fitting in, then they may out of desperation do some of these things for a little sense pleasure, and then they find themselves in jail. And some people are just evil, that's another thing, of course, where perverted, and they plan to do these things to cause others pain. Sometimes it's because people are in a very unfortunate condition to start with. And you just wonder, in certain countries, the world crime rate is high, and poverty is also high. You wonder, would that be the same here? If we become more poverty stricken, would there be more of these rape, kidnapping, theft?
Yeah, I was thinking with myself as well, I maybe have an author that I'm thinking, well, I'm a nice guy, you won't catch me ever doing that. But I was hearing the point that because we're all essentially the same, we all have the same needs. So if somebody else would do that, that should, instead of having the pride of looking down on the person, we should think, well, that means I would also do it if I was in the same situation, in the same circumstances. So Bhagavatam is really highlighting, don't just think that this is some kind of quirk that one or two people who on rare occasions will understand that under the influence of the material energy you're capable of doing anything. So be very, very careful.
I was also wondering as well, with regards to the topic of rape not being too heavy, but on a subtle level. So being in a woman's body, I've experienced a lot of discomfort just from like looks or, the way people interact kind of feels violated. So it's not a physical rape, but it feels on a subtle level. It's the same kind of, taking, sense enjoyment, and it's like.
I used to go around shops and there was one lady there, and she was telling me, there's a man who comes in who's very leery. She said, as soon as he came in, all over like a rash. So yeah. I don't know if you've heard recently, they won't allow the ladies to play sports now in shorts. They have to play them in short dresses or bikinis because they've worked out that they get more guys watching. And Prabhupada says that, he says the sexes, the tennis, was designed as a subtle sex so that men could watch the bodily parts of the women, you see. So that is, unfortunately, they're saying, oh no, you can have equality. Look, we're going topless, so you should go topless. You see, it's actually they're actually cheating. No, it's everyone. You should do it as well. You stay out late at night. The men are doing it. You do it as well. But it's actually just exploiting because the women should be respected and protected. Like that. So yeah, it's not easy. Okay, I'm going to finish there if that's okay, because I'm going to put your breakfast in the transfer bowl. Iskon Guruvinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi, Haribol. Gaura Bhaktavinda ki.